The year was 1930 when Clyde Tombaugh discovered Pluto and in doing so expanded our solar system beyond the orbit of Neptune. But since then, we have found many more worlds that have shown us that there is much more out there than just the rocky and gassy planets that lie close to the Sun. And these distant realms are now considered part of our cosmic neighborhood. These new discoveries were made possible by advanced telescopes that can peer deep into space and detect faint objects that would have been impossible to see with the instruments available just a few decades ago. In fact, over the last 20 years, we have found more than a dozen dwarf planets scattered throughout the outer reaches of our solar system. And the most surprising part is that most of them reside in an enormous disk of icy worlds that lies just beyond the orbit of Neptune. It's called the Kuiper Belt, and it's arguably the most mysterious region in our cosmic neighborhood. So here is the incredible story of the bizarre worlds that NASA has found beyond Pluto in the Kuiper Belt. Our solar system formed 4.6 billion years ago out of a giant cloud of gas and dust. As the cloud began to collapse, it spun faster and faster, and the material flattened into a disk. Meanwhile, most of the mass settled into the center, forming the Sun, and leftover debris swirled around the newborn star, eventually coalescing into the planets, moons, asteroids, and comets we know today. But not all the building blocks of our cosmic neighborhood formed at the same time. Many of the small worlds that orbit the Sun today are actually leftovers from its formation. They are ancient bodies whose surfaces have remained frozen for billions of years, because they never got warm enough for volatile substances like methane, ammonia, and water to evaporate. And these relics of the early solar system are mostly found in two places: the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, and the Kuiper Belt that surrounds the rest of our solar system. To get to the Kuiper Belt, you first have to pass through the asteroid belt, which is full of millions of rocky worlds that range in size from Vesta, the largest at 329 miles, or 530 kilometers across, to bodies less than 33 feet, or 10 meters wide. But once you reach the edge of the asteroid belt, you'll find yourself in a vast, dark and frigid realm that stretches for nearly 100 astronomical units, or 100 times the distance between the Earth and the Sun. As you journey deeper into the Kuiper Belt, you will witness a grand total of 5 planets, all of which are ice giants or dwarfs. First, you'll encounter Neptune, the 8th planet from the Sun, which was discovered in 1846 and is 30 times farther from the Sun than Earth, at 300 miles, or 480 kilometers across. It's only slightly larger than the Earth, but it has about 17 times the mass. Then you'll find Uranus, which is almost exactly the same size and mass as Neptune, and is located 15 times farther from the Sun than Earth. Both of these planets are ice giants because they are mostly made of gases and liquids that have frozen due to the intense cold of the outer solar system. But after you pass Uranus, you'll encounter the first of the dwarf planets. Makemake is relatively small, at 1,400 miles, or 2,250 kilometers across, about 1/10 the diameter of Earth. And like Neptune and Uranus, it's probably mostly made of rock and ice. Next, you'll come across another dwarf planet, Haumea, which is even smaller than Makemake. It's roughly 950 miles or 1,530 kilometers across, and has a highly elongated shape. Scientists think it's the result of a massive collision that occurred in the Kuiper Belt early in the history of the solar system. And finally, if you venture even farther into the Kuiper Belt, you'll find Eris, which is about the same size as Haumea, but with a slightly larger diameter of 1,160 miles, or 1,870 kilometers. It's also highly elongated, and scientists believe it was formed in a similar way to Haumea, after a violent collision shook up the Kuiper Belt billions of years ago. These 4 planets are the only worlds you'll find in the Kuiper Belt, because most of the objects in this region are too small to be classified as planets. In fact, the vast majority of Kuiper Belt objects are so obscure that they don't even have names. But the best thing about exploring the Kuiper Belt is that you can actually see a lot more than just the dwarf planets. You'll find an estimated 200 trillion small objects orbiting the Sun, and most of them are made of ice, rock, and dust. There are also a few 100,000 comet nuclei that range in diameter from 0.6 miles, or 1 kilometer, to 62 miles, or 100 kilometers. In other words, the Kuiper Belt is the largest reservoir of comets in the solar system, and many of these icy visitors have been flung inward toward the Sun, where they become periodic comets that streak across the night sky. But while all these objects may seem like mere specks of dust, they hold valuable clues about the origins of our solar system. You see, unlike the asteroid belt, the Kuiper Belt is relatively new, geologically speaking. Most of its objects are only a few 100 million years old, which means they haven't had enough time for their surfaces to change much since they formed. In other words, the Kuiper Belt is essentially a time capsule that holds the building blocks of our cosmic neighborhood, allowing scientists to piece together how the solar system formed. It's one of the reasons why the Kuiper Belt is so fascinating to astronomers. It's one of the last frontiers in planetary science. We've sent spacecraft to visit every planet in the inner solar system except Pluto. But thanks to the discovery of the Kuiper Belt, we know that there are dozens of nearby worlds that have never been explored up close. In fact, the New Horizons probe that visited Pluto in 2015 is now cruising through the Kuiper Belt and searching for new worlds to explore. And one day, perhaps we will send a spacecraft to explore one of the dwarf planets in the Kuiper Belt, or even land on the surface of an icy comet. Now, despite being so close to Earth, the dwarf planets and other objects in the Kuiper Belt are incredibly hard to spot because they are so dim. The only reason we know they exist is because of advanced telescopes on Earth and in space that can peer deep into the cosmos and detect the faint light that these objects reflect from the sun. For example, Makemake was discovered in 2005 using the 60-inch or 152-meter telescope at the Cerro Tololo International Observatory in Chile. But these telescopes weren't designed to look for Kuiper Belt objects. They were built to study other things in the universe, like distant galaxies and nebulae. In other words, finding these tiny worlds was basically a lucky accident. But it just goes to show how hard it is to discover objects in the Kuiper Belt. It's one of the reasons why astronomers are so excited about the James Webb Space Telescope, which launched in December 2021 and is scheduled to begin operations in 2022. The James Webb Space Telescope is the largest and most powerful space telescope ever built, and it was specifically designed to detect faint objects that lurk in the farthest reaches of the universe, including the Kuiper Belt. It can do this because it has a gigantic mirror that's coated with gold, which will help it collect infrared light from distant objects. It also has a huge 21-foot or 6.5-meter sunshield that will keep its scientific instruments extremely cold, allowing them to detect the faint heat signatures of icy worlds. Now, thanks to the James Webb Space Telescope, astronomers hope to find hundreds of new Kuiper Belt objects and learn more about the composition and structure of this mysterious region. They may even find evidence of an even more distant spherical shell of icy rocks, known as the Hills Cloud, which could surround the entire solar system. If you want to know more about what the James Webb Space Telescope will actually be able to do, check out my video on how it will rewrite the laws of physics. And as technology improves even further, who knows what other wonders we will find in the Kuiper Belt. Perhaps one day we will discover life on an icy world that is cloaked in mystery and lies just beyond the reach of our sun. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.